If you're thoroughly sick and tired of politics, well, tough. Or should that be pas de chance? Because we're off to France to examine some pretty shocking results there. President Emmanuel Macron called a snap election just over 3 weeks ago to plenty of criticism from even his own colleagues. And they, frankly, looked to have a point when in the first round, the far-right Rassemblement National, RN or National Rally, took a commanding lead. Headed by Marine Le Pen and her young protégé, Jordan Bardella, they had been expected to build on that initial success. Bardella even tipped to be the country's next Prime Minister. Yet in the end, RN came third, behind Macron's Liberal coalition in second, but in first place, a hastily assembled group of communists, Greens and socialists designed to thwart the far right, the New Popular Front. And leading the most radical part of that coalition, a man many see as France's answer to Jeremy Corbyn, Jean-Luc Melenchon. So why has France seemingly bucked the lurch to the populist right seen in other parts of Europe? What happens now with no party or group with enough seats for a majority? And just who is Jean-Luc Melenchon? I'm Niall Paterson. Welcome to the Sky News Daily. Our Europe correspondent is Adam Parsons, and he joins us from Paris. Adam, to describe this as a shock result would be to put it mildly.
I think when those exit polls came out, it really was, one of those moments when you have to look and look again and then look for a third time. Like, am I reading this right? And if it was a surprise for me, well, I was at the event staged by the National Rally with their MPs, with their activists, with journalists from all over the world, and they had brought champagne, and they brought it by the bucket load. They had got those champagne glasses, when they set them up into a pyramid. This was something that had been created as a jubilant celebration, and then suddenly, bang, all the air went out of the balloon, and very quickly, not only were they having to watch their own their own electoral disappointment played out on the big screen, but suddenly Jean-Luc Melenchon, the old socialist firebrand, the man, part of the left-wing group that was suddenly projected to be the biggest party, pops up on the screen to a cacophony of boos from the National Rally members and starts saying that he wants to lead and that this was a triumph over the far right. And just down the road from me, people had gathered to see these results in the square, and there was an enormous cheer, people hugging, kissing, because they were celebrating what they saw as a victory over the far right. It leaves so many questions, about what happens to France next. But I think even now it feels like this country is taking a collective deep breath of wow.
How on earth did we get to this point? Because it certainly didn't look like this was going to be the result after the first round. As you say, the National Rally, RN, really were in the ascendancy.
I think it's the one thing that everyone agrees on. Because I was in the room and Jordan Bardella, the 28-year-old protégé of Marine Le Pen in the National Rally, the man who, a week ago, we thought could well be the next Prime Minister of this country, came in and blamed their defeat on what he said was effectively a stitch-up by the other parties. He said had come together with the express purpose of blocking us. And he's right. There's no doubt about that. The rest of the political establishment, I'm talking going from the communists all the way through to remember, the centre-right Republicans, decided that they didn't want the National Rally being the biggest party. We saw an enormous amount of work done in withdrawing candidates from some parties so that all the vote would coalesce behind a single opposition member, and that worked. So it was a defensive action. Now, whether you characterise that, Neil, as a stitch-up, as the National Rally would have it, or whether you say this is the whole purpose of a two-round system where, to use the great French expression, you vote with your heart in the first round and your head in the second, that's a matter of debate. But I think we all know what's happened. The deeper questions are, why did that happen? What were the cultural, social, political tidal waves that were behind that?
Can we just dig a little bit more deeply, though, into the stymied ambitions of National Rally, the far-right party and all of this? They certainly did put on seats, and there was tactical voting going on, but One of the changes I perceived in the way in which they were organising their campaign over the last few days was that Jordan Bardella, that very young kind of Prime Minister in waiting, was not marginalised, but you certainly saw an awful lot more of Marine Le Pen over the past few days. There was a very obvious reminder that this is her party, and I wondered if that might have galvanised a few votes.
Marine Le Pen is the star of the RN. Jordan Bardella is the coming guy, but that's largely because Marine Le Pen has guided him through his career. Marine Le Pen is the biggest of the big beasts. Let me put one caveat in that. The young people, and far more young people are turning to the RN than may have done in previous years. I think they look at Bardella as being someone who understands their concerns. He's got a big TikTok presence, he understands social media, but he is a fluent, charismatic talker. But of course Marine Le Pen is the shining star of that RN movement. And of course the other thing is she will run again for president in a few years' time. Make no mistake about this. This whole machine is galvanised not so much around parliamentary popularity, although that's crucially important. This whole RM machine is focused on 2027 and Marine Le Pen's next run for the presidency. She got 41.5% in 2022 against Macron. She knows that in the next run, she will have a much higher recognition factor than the person she runs against. She'll probably be the best known politician in that race. And in her heart, she'll think this is her best chance to get the biggest job in France.
Thanks, Adam. After the break, just who is Jean-Luc Melenchon? I'll be speaking to a French academic next. Welcome back. The seemingly unstoppable rise of the populist right appears to have hit a wall in France, thanks to the newly minted New Popular Front and a whole load of tactical voting. But as the politicians desperately try to form some sort of coalition, just who is Jean-Luc Melenchon, the self-styled leader of this hastily assembled crew, and what exactly are his chances of becoming Prime Minister? Philippe Marliere is Professor of French and European Politics at UCL. Professor, tell me about Monsieur Melenchon.
I think the British left, Corbynites, I would say, probably know him quite well. It's a fascinating background and career, because he started off as a member of the Socialist Party, which is a sort of equivalent to Labour in this country. He was an admirer of the then French president François Mitterrand, but he grew sort of tired of being in the Socialist Party and finally left the party in 2008, founded 2 or 3 small parties. The latest one, it's called France Insoumise, which roughly translates as Unbowed France. It's a personal party, as political scientists call it. In a sense, is a very top-down type of party. Very little democracy in there. He's the man leading, calling the shots. He's had 3 attempts at the presidential election. He failed narrowly twice to qualify for the decisive second round. So he's no minor figure, if you like, on the left. What's more, he's become very unpopular. Mélenchon is a divisive figure, is not seen as someone who can sort of unite the left to start with. It's not simply his policies, his opinion, but also his style. Very, very abrasive, very confrontational. And his political opponents on the Macron side, the right and the far right, absolutely loathe him, presenting him as a sort of extreme left, very dangerous for democracy.
But why the electoral success if he is so badly thought of?
I think he managed to rally around himself a kind of left-wing electorate which was disenfranchised by the sort of drift to the right of the French social democracy. He's also very good at attracting the votes and support of the young, particularly young with degrees, living in urban areas, educated, politicized. And I think he's good at that. And finally, he's also good, and I think that's probably credit when credit is due, is good at mobilizing ethnic minorities in the banlieue, if you like. Normally, ethnic minorities particularly young people, do not vote. And I think he's been quite good at that, focusing his policies and discourse on issues which are of concern of them. For instance, Islamophobia, racism, police brutality, lately in support of Gaza, things like that. So he's made a difference there, but that's not enough to build a winning coalition on the left, which would get an absolute majority. The paradox is that the left is very strong today in France, in big cities, and in the outskirts of Paris, the former communist belt, now which has sort of gone to Mélenchon's party. In peri-urban, rural areas of France, this is where National Rally really gets its votes. The left also has lost the working class vote, which is another paradox. The left likes to be seen as the party of the working class. It's probably lost it. I think the party getting lots of working class votes in France today is National Rally.
Just in terms of the man himself, I mean, as you say, he's well known to the Corbynites here and has been described in terms on this side of the channel, at least, as the French Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, does he share with Mr. Corbyn that, perhaps not cult leader figure style, but does he enjoy that same level of personal support from younger people? Does he command with his oratory? What is he as a man?
I think if you want to point to similarities, I would say yes. I think the young are very much come out in support of both figures. I think it's very clear. I think in London, Corbyn was re-elected largely due to sort of the support of young voters and also ethnic minorities. Whereas for Mélenchon, it's the same. So he's very much able to appeal to the young vote. So that's very much a similarity. Apart from that, I think their personalities are quite different. I believe that Mélenchon is a completely different type of orator. He speaks like a sort of early 20th century politician. He can really captivate the crowd, if you like that. He's a great orator. He's a very effective debater. When he goes and speaks to the media, he's quite intimidating. I think very few French journalists know how to handle Mélenchon. He's very abrupt, very direct, and he gets his points across. So these are very good points for him. But the downside is that a lot of people, particularly on the left, who could have supported him and liked him, have now profoundly dislike him because they find him really brutal. The fact that, for instance, there's no democracy in his own organization is really bad omen. You can't claim to be on the left and being in favor of more democracy in politics, in working place, and so on and so forth. And yourself, you do not apply this principle to your own organization. So is also a way of dealing with dissent in his own organization by purging his parties. He's done it with 5 incumbent MPs, which he sacked just before the election because they were not following the line. So all that is a bit too much. And I think his time has gone because in 2022, he seemed to be the man of the moment. And one of the slogans was, elect the left, vote for the left, and Mélenchon will be the prime minister. The whole left was behind that kind of rallying cry. Today, in the run-up to the election, all left-wing leaders, and there are several, all came out publicly and said, if we win, Mélenchon will not be prime minister. They know full well now that Mélenchon is divisive. So I can quite safely tell you now that Mélenchon will not be the prime minister of a left-wing government, should Macron, of course, invite them to form a government.
I keep seeing parallels, again, with Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn, of course, a figure who could not unite the left behind him and take it on to electoral success. Both men are anti-European Union. Both men oppose NATO as an organisation. Both men as well, have faced accusations of anti-Semitism.
That's right. All that is true. And both men have been very bad at handling with those accusations. And I would say particularly Mélenchon. If you think that Corbyn handled badly anti-Semitism in his own party or accusations against himself, you've seen nothing because Mélenchon was worse. Every time particularly Jewish people in France, sort of confront him with that, he dismisses the accusations. He said, how come? I'm not anti-Semitic. I've never been. I've always fought anti-Semitism. So there's no Starmer-style leader in France saying, well, we need to put an end to it. There's no such political authority at the moment on the French left to sort of deal with that. Also, it's very dodgy politics when it comes to international relations. Literally days before a Russian invasion of Ukraine, Melenchon kept saying publicly, it's all NATO's and the US fault, all that. They are the aggressors, not Russia. We should be friendly with Russia. Russia is a historic partner of France. So if you remember Macron being ridiculed and mocked for trying to speak, to engage with Putin, it was nothing compared to what Mélenchon said. Mélenchon clearly said that the peaceful side was Russia against NATO.
Yes, I mean, certainly no one is predicting that despite the fact that Mélenchon will not be the next Prime Minister of France, no one is predicting the demise of the populist hard left in French politics. I just wonder, however, when we look across Europe, we do see the rise of the populist right. Who you feel in France is going to come out on top on that battle? You have, of course, National Rally, still adding seats. We keep talking about them being in third place, but they did add seats. I mean, who is going to come out on top, the left or the right? Do you reckon?
I think in a democracy, one bloc won that election. It's the left. Logically, it would be fair that Macron turned to the left and say, well, go fast, try to form a minority government, and let's see what happens. It would be very interesting to see what happens, because it won't be Mélenchon, in my opinion. I'm not the only one to think that in France. It will probably be someone a lot of people in the UK and possibly in France haven't heard of, a younger figure for sure, possibly a female politician, thinking notably of the Green leader, who did very well during the campaign as a unifying force.
Thanks, Philippe. That's your lot for this edition of The Daily. We're back again tomorrow.